Now, first things first. On the world page now, what we have are two important news. First, we already know that there was this Democratic National Convention in Chicago that happened, and the former President Trump has now affirmed and has supported the Democratic representative Kamala Harris, and he's said that he's also targeted Trump by saying that it is actually that it might be a black job, and therefore because Trump, what he keeps doing is he keeps targeting. He was earlier targeting this Obama's for being black. Now he's also targeting Kamala Harris for her credentials and her passport and her ethnicity. And in fact, that is the basic format of Trump. He basically believes in something called as white supremacy. Now this is something which is now being countered very openly by the Democrats. So they have taken their own ground in terms of what their political philosophy and what their economic philosophy will be. So their philosophy will not be on countering migrants, because if you see America, when we talk about America, America is a country where people go for opportunities. People see opportunities there. People see equality there. People see that this is the land where you can become anyone with opportunities, and therefore this is what is being affirmed by Barack Obama, as well as and as well as Kamala Harris. So this is the news, but this is again political news, not very important, but because it's US is an important country for the world, whatever happens in US is important for us. Then Ukraine launches a drone attack on Moscow, one of war's largest on the city. Now we already know that what Ukraine has done. Ukraine has opened another front of the war. Till this time, what was till from 2022, what had happened was that the Russians have had attacked Ukraine and taken over certain pieces of their land. But now, what in a U-turn to divert the resources of the entire conflict. Remember, you have to call this as a conflict and not as a war, because that is what India's stance is. Now, within this conflict, what Ukraine has done is Ukraine has opened another front, and it has started attacking Russia in its own area of Kursk, and that is where it has started making insertions. And this is why Putin has now started, because it's a surprise move that Ukraine has done, that Putin has started making moves in different parts of the territory of Russia. One of these territories is called Chechnya. Now, Chechnya is a Muslim dominated region within the Russian Federation, and he's basically talked to Chechen leaders with respect to their support, and then and encourage the fighters that the war, the conflict might be a prolonged one, and they might need the help of Chechens in this conflict as well. Then nothing has happened with respect to Israel and Gaza truce, despite the diplomat being there. So the I think Blinken was there for quite some time, and Anthony Blinken was there, and he was trying to find out a truce deal between Gaza and Israel. But despite spending a substantial amount of time there, nothing has been done. And both these both these parties have stood their ground. And Israel talks about that complete annihilation and destruction, political and economic destruction of Hamas. And Hamas says that we now want a much more wider, a much more the kind of truce that we want should not be a temporary truce. The truce that we want should be a permanent truce. So this is where this entire thing has failed. Apart from that, more with respect to international affairs, Thailand has reported mpox cases from Africa. Now, this is now you already know about mpox. I taught you about mpox. What is this monkeypox? And you have two clade 1 and clade 2. Clade 1 is much more deadly as compared to clade 2. This is something which is now started spreading, and that is why WHO has called this as a variant of concern. This is something which is a matter of concern, that is there. Then another important news that you should be knowing is that in China there is a lot of unemployment. Like just like in India we have a scourge of unemployment, China is also going through a scourge of unemployment. But the difference with Chinese scourge of unemployment is that they are unemployed are typically highly educated, so which they called as rotten tail kids. So you can use this particular information maybe for your essay or for even for your ethics. That what has happened in China is that since the last 3-4 years, especially after 2021, they faced a real estate crisis. Now, what was this real estate crisis? Read about something called as Everglade crisis. So, Everglade was a big company in China, which was a real estate company, and it had started defaulting on its loan. So, think of say in India, think of someone like DLF or Godrej or say Prestige in South India. They start defaulting on their loans, and they leave their homes that they are constructed unconstructed. So this was basically called in China. This was called as rotten tail buildings. Now the similar a similar thing has now emerging in population, because what has happened is that since the late 90s actually, China had invested huge amounts of money into education of their entire workforce. And after 1999, they dramatically expanded the enrollment of universities in a bid to basically educate the workforce. But with the coming up of AI and the coming up of new generation, the amount of jobs that are available are very limited. As I was telling you earlier as well, that right now we are having this conversation. Maybe another 2-3 years, 5 years, we will not have this conversation. It will be an AI led conversation. So all of this is what is leading to and the fact that the economy is going down in China, the economic growth is going down, but you have this huge scourge of people. You have this huge number of people, around 100 million people that they have trained, and out of this 100 million people that they have youth that they have trained in the age group of 16 to 24, around 20% of them are unemployed. And what they are going back is that we call them as rotten tail kids, because they are now having excess education, and in the face of bleak economy, they are now actually going back to their own homes after being educated and working, and either doing taking pension, eating out of the pension of their parents, or doing low paying job despite being highly qualified. So this is a major problem that China is facing. India is also facing an unemployment problem, but the problem is of a different type. Then the next important article is government cites social justice to cancel lateral entry. At 6 years ago, it restructured the scheme to avoid reservation. Now, in a very very interesting news, folks, that how governance happens in this country. Give me 1 second. I had to. Yes. Now we have already heard about this. We are going to read another article by a colleague of mine from Lakshmi Bai College. Now, the entire issue, you already know what lateral entry is. That the government had notified these 45 seats, and it said that these 45 seats do not stand for reservation, because of the fact that people who are applying for these jobs are basically coming on deputation, and deputation basically means that in their original cadre, suppose if I was to apply for this job, in my original cadre, which is teaching, there was already reservation there. So people in case of deputation, you do not require reservation, and therefore all this entire scheme should not be put to reservation scheme. The other aspect that was brought by the government was that these are basically single post seats. These are single post seats rather than being generic seats. Now, what is single post seats? Now, my idea was to apply to the Ministry of Education. So this was one director seat that I was thinking of applying to. Now, it required 10 years of 10 years of experience in the field of education. It required certain papers that you have published. It requires other things. Now if it's a generic seat like IAS, IPS, IFS are all generic seats. I mean you can apply. You should have a basic qualification of 21 years and a graduation, and you can apply. But if it's a specialized kind of a post, if it's a specialized post, that means each ministry is coming up with 2, 3 or 4 posts. Suppose if it's coming up with 3 posts, we already know about the 13-point roster. That if there are 5, 6, or if there are 10 seats in any particular ministry, the first 3 seats will go to the general category, the fourth seat will go to the OBC, the seventh seat will go to the SC, the 10th seat will go to EWS, and the 13th seat will go to the ST. So, but if there are only single posts, if there are only 2 posts, 3 posts, then all of them will become general category posts, because they are single posts, they are not generic posts. So this is how this entire order developed, and then this is how this entire flow, how the conversation between the ministries and then the prime minister's office was there. And ultimately the DOPT argued that each post needs a specialized qualification and experience to suit the requirement of the department where the post is to be filled up. And because this is a single post, you do not require you do not require any kind of reservation there. So this was the thing. And then there was another issue with respect to that. There are sufficient pool of officers that are there. Now the government basically said that why do you need lateral entry. So there were in the DOPT there was some questioning that why do you need lateral entry. The government said that the other thought was that we need lateral entry because we need fresh ideas from outside. And between 1996 and 2002, the number of IS that the government had recruited was very low. In those seats, in those years, the government was recruiting around 300 to 350 to 350 total officers, out of which around 70-80 would be IS officers. And because after 15-20 years of service you become a joint secretary, 15 years of service you become a joint secretary, the number of pool of IS officers and higher officers to become joint secretary are low. And therefore the government thought of introducing this fresh talent. But at the same point of time, one of the talks from DOPT was that there are sufficient amount of people available. In fact, for each particular seat of joint secretary there are around 355 seats available at joint secretary level. There are more people. There are around 18 people for each particular seat. And this could be done. But still there was hesitancy from the government. They said we want expertise, and because we want expertise we would like to have this lateral entry scheme. Now this is also being taken up. If you see this article, this is also being taken up by Aditi Narayani Paswan. She teaches at Lakshmi Bai College. Now, basically, she says that the idea behind the governance is that of reservation, and she's right to a certain extent. Now, that if you see the higher echelons of bureaucracy, or even the higher echelons of judiciary, you can see when you see the judiciary. If you see the if you see the judges of the Supreme Court, you will see that most of them come from the Brahmin community. There are hardly 1 or 2 judges that you will see in the entire panel which will be coming from the reserved category. Similarly, what she says is that in the higher echelons of bureaucracy, the representations of the marginalized section, which is the SCs and the STs, is already abysmally low. And once you start putting this into context, then it will be even if you start implementing this lateral entry, then the representation will even go down. And remember the argument from the SC/ST sub-reservation judgment that the Supreme Court recently gave. It said that we should not look at merit versus reservation as binaries. We should think where in a country like India, social justice is a public good. We need to think about merit not just in terms of marks, in terms of qualification, but also in terms of social inequality that is there. And therefore all of this needs to be taken into consideration. And we should implement this 13 point roster in case of this thing. At the same point of time, there's another point that she has started making, is that especially the cadre that I come from in education, what happens a lot is that the seats are usually not filled for SCs and STs. And what it says is that you write down there, no candidate was found suitable, NFS. So this is again something which is a major problem in state and central universities, where the justice is not being done, despite thousands of candidates being applying to a particular position, and you have NFS being put, and no person is being selected there. So an important news with respect to this. Then there is another important news on the front page, folks, which is with respect to the commerce minister has recently taken a dig at Amazon. Now, why he has taken a dig at Amazon is that Amazon, in one of the previous years, had shown that it has had a loss of $1 billion. Now, what is this loss of $1 billion? Now, what Piyush Goyal basically says is that Amazon is basically resorting to what is called as predatory pricing. Now, what is predatory pricing? Predatory pricing is basically a technique whereby you reduce the price of a commodity lower than your cost of production. Now, which essentially means that you're going to sell on a loss. Now, why are you going to sell on a loss? Because your aim is to capture the market. Once you capture the market, then you rule the entire market. Now, this is a report which is by Pehle India, which is a non-profit organization, and then this report basically says that there has been a negative impact of, if you see the overall impact of e-commerce. Yes, e-commerce is here to stay. We are not justifying the fact that e-commerce is not is going to be wished away, but at the same point of time, the way that e-commerce has transformed in US, it has completely wiped off mom and pop stores, the kirana stores that they are there in your neighborhood. All of them have gone in case of US, and now these Walmarts and Amazon has taken over the entire US economy, and then these small traders and small retailers have basically taken the brunt. Now, this is exactly what Piyush Goyal has targeted, and he basically says that these companies are not allowed B2C. They cannot sell under the e-commerce rules. They cannot directly sell to the consumers, but they are right now resorting to sell directly to the consumers to increase their market size, and that is something which he targets. At the same point of time, there is also a concern that in order to alleviate this entire problem, the government is basically coming up with something called as ONDC. Now, think of ONDC just like UPI. I explained this yesterday in one of my lectures, that UPI is something like a multi-plane plug. That suppose you have Paytm with you, you have Google Pay with you, you have, say, Bharat Pay with you, you have Phone Pay with you. You plug any of these payment systems with that multi-plug, and then you can transfer your payments. Similarly, you have created an open network of digital commerce, which is a kind of an open system, which is an open network for exchange of goods and services over digital or electronic mode. But at the same point of time, it needs that all these companies like Amazon, Flipkart, Swiggy, Zomato should fully integrate their APIs into this multi-plug, but they have still not done it, and they are reluctant to do it. So this is one of the major issues in this particular area. Then another news on the and that's why it took me a lot of time today, because there's so many news on the front page itself. Now, PM is visiting Warsaw for talks, and he will be in Kyiv on Thursday for meeting President Zelensky. Now, let's read about the editorial with respect to this. It's an interesting editorial. Now, the Kiev opportunity. Now, till now, what the Indian bureaucracy and the Indian diplomacy was doing, it was hyphenating the Russia and Central Europe. So basically, it said that we are talking to Russia, we are talking to through Russia, we are going to talk to Central Europe. Russia is going to be the main country that we are going to talk about, and our world view of Central Europe is going to be through Russia and not an independent Central Europe view. And now and see, does Russia, can we say that Russia sees the entire Indo-Pacific through Delhi's eyes? No, it is also having a close relationship with North Korea. It is also having a close relationship with China, and it has in fact opened up its defense sector to China. So when Moscow is not looking at Indo-Pacific from the point of view of in India, why should we look at Central Europe from the point of view of only Russia? So this is called as hyphenization or dehyphenization. So we should dehyphenate. Hyphens are basically brackets. So we should not put Russia and Central Europe in the same bracket. We can think of them as independent entities, and we should not hope that, and there are expectations that India will be able to resolve the conflict through one visit. That is over expectation. We should not expect all of that. But and it is also not a compensation that since the honorable prime minister went to Russia 6 weeks ago, he's also going to visit Kiev. But think of it as multipolarity. Think of it as multi-engagement. India is already facing a lot of backlash for having a very deep and relationship with Moscow. But still, we are maintaining that we have independent relationships with all these other countries. And India has also been criticized not just on this account. This entire issue of Russia and Ukraine goes back to 2014 when they had an internal change in Ukraine, and one of the puppet governments which Russia had installed. I'm forgetting the name of the president at that point of time. That president was basically removed through Maidan revolution, and then after that the Russia actually captured the Ukraine's Crimean Peninsula, which is a very important peninsula. You should look it into the world map. This Crimean Peninsula, and then you had this full blown conflict that has happened in 2022. So all of this is there, and Russia basically India has also kind of given sanctity to the philosophy of Russia, which was limited sovereignty for its own CIS countries. But now we are getting out of all that hyphenization. So read about this. Then another important article that is there, and on the front page, folks, the last article that you need to do on the front page is with respect to where is it Ayushman Bharat. Now you should be aware about Ayushman Bharat. Till now, in case of Ayushman Bharat, you get around 5 lakh rupees, and it is given to 55 crore beneficiaries. And there are around there are some number of hospital beds that are reserved for Ayushman Bharat. Now what has happened is there is this group of secretaries for the social sector. Now you should be aware about that all these secretaries meet at times, and all these 9 ministry secretaries met, and they have made a presentation to the cabinet secretary, and this the expansion of the Ayushman Bharat scheme is being talked about, whereby they are saying that the amount that you are providing to Ayushman Bharat coverage should be increased from 5 lakhs to 10 lakhs, and for women it should increase to 15 lakhs, and instead of the 55 crore beneficiaries, you should increase it to 100 crore beneficiaries under in the next few years. So read about this, and the hospital beds, which is right now private hospital beds, which are right now around 7 lakh beds, should be increased to around 11 lakh beds. So 4 lakh increase in this. And apart from the Ayushman Jan Shudhi Kendras, which provides you cheap medicine. So another important news for you. Then coming to this particular thing. Now, Malaysia has changed its track on orangutan diplomacy. Now, what is this orangutan diplomacy? Now you must be aware that Malaysia and Indonesia, especially Malaysia, is one of the biggest exporters of palm oil in the world. Now palm oil is produced because of the fact that palm trees are grown in this region of Sumatra, and this entire region is basically shared by three countries, by the way, folks. It's Indonesia, Malaysia, and Brunei. So read about these three countries and how they share this entire equatorial region where you have a lot of palm trees. But because of the amount of deforestation that is happening, because you need to cut these palm trees, you need to create these factories, the habitat of these cute animals called orangutans has gone down. And because it has gone down, it is being said by a number of countries that no, the palm oil that Malaysia is sending is not sustainable, and it is on the life of orangutans. And therefore the President Ghani of Malaysia had talked about that whichever country is going to buy palm oil from us, we are going to gift them orangutans. So it's actually even worse, that you destroy the habitat of orangutans, and then you say we are also, first we will destroy your homes, and then we will shift you from that home to say a country like India, which is going to take care of you. Now because and they said that this is also followed by China, which is called as panda diplomacy. But actually China's policy of panda diplomacy is very different, because China really cares about its panda. It has huge facilities for care of panda, and for conservation and development of pandas. But Malaysia does not have this, and therefore they have gone back on this orangutan policy, and they've said that no, if any country is going to buy palm oil from us, then that we will give that option, that option that they can adopt orangutans, and they can adopt orangutans only in Malaysia. So this has been the change in policy. So you should have an awareness about this. Then Justice Hema Committee report, why it was delayed. Now we have read Justice Hema Committee report 3-4 times now. We know it is with respect to the abduction and sexual assault of a film actress in the Malayalam film industry. And after that we know that this report was basically people found out, the Women in Cinema Collective, WCC, basically found out that this is something which is happening quite often, and therefore they recommended the government to form a committee, and the Kerala Chief Minister formed a committee, and it had submitted a report in 2020. But still it was not given. Why it was not made public? Because a number of people had basically said, suppose I am an actor and I've witnessed this sexual harassment, then I have deposed in front of this committee, and I have told that this all directors, this all individuals are involved in this entire racket. This is the mafia that exists. Suppose I've taken the name of Karan Johar in that particular thing. Now if the report is published, my conversation with Justice Hema Committee will also be there, and then I will also face this discrimination. No one will hire me, no one will basically involve me in these things, so in the movies. So therefore, because of that backlash, a number of actors, a number of people who had deposed in front of this Justice Hema Committee had said that please do not make it public. We have a right to we have a right to privacy, and therefore only a retracted version of this particular committee report was out, because everyone is afraid of the mafia that exists in the Malayali movie industry. And we already know the committee has already said that there is a culture of casting couch. There is a culture of vulgar comments by men, drunk male actors barging themselves into the room of women actresses. All of this exists in the industry, and I am sure, as I told you, this exists in Bollywood as well. And it's a male dominated industry where lack of gender parity in terms of pay, working hours and rights are also there. So read about this, why this is important. Then another important news from the polity point of view is the alleged Muda scam. Now it's a very interesting scam whereby the governor of the state has now asked private individuals to basically assess whether a scam has existed, whether a scam has been done, and whether this thing some I mean this particular the CM can be prosecuted or not. Now typically, now this is very important, folks. What happens is, suppose the chief minister of a particular state has taken, or some ministers have taken some illegal action, or some illegal activities happen. Now the governor of the state can only sanction prosecution if the council of ministers advise it. So because if you read the constitution, it says under article 163 that the governor will be bound by the aid and advice of the council of ministers. But in this particular, there is a special case in which in 2004 the Madhya Pradesh Special Police Establishment versus the state of Madhya Pradesh, the MP Lokayukta had basically gone into a detailed inquiry into corruption of two ministers. And despite the fact that the MP government had not given prosecution the basically the sanction for prosecution, despite that, the court had accepted that since the report of Lokayukta had already indicted the council of ministers, the council of ministers have a conflict of interest, and because they have a conflict of interest, their assent is not required. Similarly, the case here is that of Muda scam. Now you can read the scam, what the scam was. I'll explain it to you in a nutshell. Now suppose I have a land in Haryana. Now I am not aware of that land. I mean, I know about that land, but suppose the Haryana government takes up that land for its own development without informing me. It encroaches upon my land. Then what, under the Land Acquisition Act, either Haryana government will pay me 3 times the amount of the value of that land because it illegally took away my land, or it will under the Muda scheme, under this 50-50% scheme, it will give me in exchange of 50% of my taking illegally my land. Suppose I had 100 acres. So for 50 acres of land that it has illegally taken, 50 acres it will give me in Gurgaon, which is a developed land. And that is where the scam is. The scam is that there was this land which was held by the brother-in-law of the chief minister, which was then later on transferred to the wife of the chief minister, and the land that was given. So they said that our land was illegally taken by this by the government, and the land that it was given was very expensive land, and that is where the scam is. So they took away the land of this 3.16 acres, which was estimated at the cost of 3.5 crores, whereas the land they received was worth 55 crore rupees, and that is where the scam is. And now under PCA, Prevention of Corruption Act, and under BNSS, the governor has basically asked the one of the lawyers to basically get into this entire process and then see the prosecution, if prosecution of the CM can be done. So this is with respect to this. We have already done these articles. Now we have also talked about funding mismatch. Now remember, yesterday we were talking about that what has happened in India in the last few years is that the deposit growth has gone down and the credit growth has increased. The deposit growth is around 10%, whereas the credit growth, so people are borrowing at 13% and people are only depositing at 10%, which is going to which has led to a increase in the credit to deposit ratio. And because of this, what the banks need money. So how are basically banks getting money? Banks are basically now relying on certificate of deposits. Basically they are now asking corporates to deposit certain money with them, but those deposits at a higher cost, and therefore the cost of maintenance of funds for banks is increasing. If the cost of maintenance of funds for banks is increasing, it might transit into a higher lending cost as well. So and this is a structural liquidity issue that is being created in the banking structure, and the best source is CASA, the current and savings account. And then that therefore, if you remember, yesterday we talked about that Shashikant Das, the RBI governor, had talked about that both public sector and private sector banks needs to get into this activity of creating more CASA accounts. At the same point of time, there is this economist group of economists by Bank of Baroda, which says that we are not very clear why people are not depositing money in banks, but typically it might be because of mutual funds and other areas where lucrative options are also there. So this is another news, an interesting story of stop scrolling. You can probably read this. Then comes the idea of this thing, paying more for less. Now the idea is that in any particular business, especially in telecom business, there is something called as 80/20 rule, where 80% of the revenue comes from the 20% of subscribers. A lot of these subscribers are basically free subscribers, and that's also the case with Netflix, by the way. Netflix earns from people who actually subscribe to Netflix and do not watch movies. For example, people like me are really good, are good for Netflix because I subscribe for Netflix, but I really do not watch so much of Netflix. Similarly, this is how the thing is also there in case of telecom services. But at the same point of time, what is also happening in case of telecommunication services is that the regulatory reform have happened such a way that the prices have decreased substantially. And because the prices have reduced substantially, the services that we are getting in the telecom services are not very high quality services. And therefore, if you see, in as compared to say Western countries, the kind of 4G that we get and the kind of 5G that we get is not that of the quality that we get in the Western countries. So there is this problem that we are faced in the telecom industry, where yes, we agree that we are the lowest in the world. If you see per GB cost of data in India, that is absolutely dirt cheap in case of India. But the quality of services that we are able to provide is extremely poor. And we already have read about the revised Telecom Act, because all these telecom companies are now saying that all these other companies, OTT companies, are basically taking up their revenue share, and they are not able to they don't share the revenues with us, but they use our entire system. Then we have already talked about this particular issue of the tragedy of Wayanad. You can read this particular article. We have already read about Wayanad, and how the Madhav Gadgil report as well as the Kasturi Rangan report, both these reports had talked about that these are fragile regions, these ecologically fragile regions. Do not get into that. But all of these expert panel advices, especially read about the Gadgil report, were basically not followed, especially in Wayanad. And you have landslides on very large extent in the states of Kerala, because of the fact that there are too much of economic activity, too much of mining, rocks, construction of roads that is happening, and you're not able to balance the needs of the environment with with that of economy. And apart from that, you also have issues with respect to wildlife protection. The areas of animal habitat is also is being destroyed, and that's why you see a number of human elephant conflict happening in Kerala again. So read about this article. I've not dealt it in detail. Please read about it. It's an important article. And finally, the article with respect to academic freedom in South Asian University. You can read this. This is something which has happened with Ashoka University earlier as well. So these are with respect to this. We've already talked about OTTs under the Telecom Act. Despite government denial, telecoms has a different view. We have talked about that all these telecoms are basically saying that all these companies, Netflix, etc., WhatsApp, Google Meet, should come under the Telecom Act, whereas these companies say that we only provide over the top services, that we should not come into this. And finally, the enforcement action should only be the last resort, taxman to Sitaraman to taxman, basically विश्वास विवाद से विश्वास वाला जो इनका scheme है, that is what they are talking about. So with this we end the newspaper of today, folks. Yes, with this we end the newspaper of today. We will meet tomorrow